On the self-experimentation topic, you've been self-experimenting for many years. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if throughout your years of experimentation, if there's 3 or 4 biomarkers, so you typically measure, blood biomarkers routinely. Yeah. If there's 3 or 4 really important ones that you think are important and that you routinely measure, and if they have anything to do with performance or mental acuity or perhaps aging.
Yeah, there are a few there are many blood markers that I look at, and I had a fun conversation with Pete Attia on the podcast not too long ago about this, but my markers, the markers that I'm following right now are, number 1, my millimolar concentration of ketones. So I have a device just on the counter over there, a Precision Extra device by Abbott Labs, that allows me to use both glucose strips and ketone strips. So I can look at my, say, fasting or waking fasting glucose level and then ketone level, and monitor that after certain types of, say, exercise where the ketone level can drop, and so on and so forth. Because I've identified for myself, and part of the reason I have fat in my tea is I operate best mentally at around 1.1 to 1.7 millimolars. And I only figured that out by tracking.
Very interesting.
And some people, for instance, perform much better the higher the concentration. The higher the concentration of ketones, the better they feel. Mm-hmm. I don't fall in that camp. And I was having a conversation with a scientist a few days ago about this. And he said, well, really, and this is not a new observation, but your blood level of ketones can be gamed or increased in many different ways, right? So you could just eat a meal that's full of medium chain triglycerides, or eat a meal that's just full of fat in general, and you could spike your ketone levels. And that's not necessarily indicative of sort of an endogenous production of ketones. Mm-hmm. And or you could be fasting, for instance, in like deep fasting after 5 or 6 or 7 days. In my particular case, I think you also want to look at, and this is true, a lot of very smart people like Pete, Tia, Dom D'Agostino, very, very smart guy, Dominic, would say likely that it also could be some people utilize ketones better than others.
Yes.
So just because you have a high level of ketones doesn't mean you're necessarily doing a lot with it. And in my case, a high level of ketones, my hypothesis is, well, maybe past a certain point, my kind of machinery gets very inefficient or gets damaged. So between 1.1 and 1.7, my brain functions at a level reminiscent of pre-Lyme. And that's a whole separate thing.
Yes,
I got kind of knocked out of normal cognitive function for 9 months due to severe Lyme disease. But when I am focused on at least a nominal amount of ketones, I feel like my old self.
But it's interesting, you mentioned, the ketone thing. I just want to briefly give you my story. So I've never been very I've never noticed really any extreme mental benefits or mental acuity changing when I consume large amounts of MCT, on empty stomach, on whatever. And I found out that I have one ApoE4 allele. And of course, at that point, I became terrified of Alzheimer's, and because it increases the risk for Alzheimer's by 2-fold. And I'm writing an academic paper on this right now and getting into all the mechanisms and diet, lifestyle, and things like that. But what I found very interesting is that the studies that have been done where they give, for example, people that have dementia or are in the early stages of Alzheimer's, they give them beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone body. And there's improvements.
I have some synthetic jet fuel in the
freezer
if you want to try it. We'll probably both vomit on my couch, so let's
I've
do it
heard
later.
It's disgusting. But so people that were ApoE3 responded very well. So they had improvements in learning and memory.
With supplemental MCT.
With beta-hydroxybutyrate. Beta. They gave them beta-hydroxybutyrate. But what was interesting to me and also very discouraging was that people with the ApoE4 allele did not have those benefits. And that's, if you look at Alzheimer's, people with Alzheimer's, between 65 and 80% of all people who have Alzheimer's have one allele of ApoE4.
Oh.
So
well, I bet I have that on both sides of my family then, because I have Alzheimer's on both sides.